Sorry about that, guys. I had it running on my phone, so I had to switch to the laptop. So let me just send out an invitation again for the students that got disconnected. How we doing this morning, Isabel?
Good morning. I'm all right. Hanging in there. I couldn't hear you for a second.
I said that's all you can do, one day at a time, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing okay. Having a little bit of issues trying to get
I think my computer is having technical issues because for some reason, this is the second time. Like my other teacher, I couldn't barely hear him, and now I can barely hear you. Let me see. Because this computer's on
I can
like loud.
hear you loud.
No, it's still the same way. I don't know.
Is the telephone causing problems?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay. Hi, Destiny. I just sent out another invitation, so you can't hear me at all, Isabel? Huh. I'm at max volume. That's gonna have to be something we need to look at. I can send a support email for you if you like. Okay. Let me just send a support email out for you. See if I can get someone to help you. Okay. Sorry about that, Denim. I had to switch from the phone to the laptop. All right, Isabel. Let me just make a note here to send out for help. So you said, Isabel, the sound is going in and out. Myra, welcome back. I was trying to get Fayana here. All right, let me send a support for Isabel. Okay, Isabel. So I just sent a support email for you, and you should be copied. Okay, there's Fayana. Sorry about that, Fayana. I had to switch from one device to another. Didn't mean to kick you guys out. So you should check your email, and those should be okay, Faye. There should be a link there. Thank you for coming back, Ty Quill. Sorry about the technical difficulties there. So let's get started. Now I have everybody back that was here. Manal, welcome.
Good morning.
Okay. So today's date is Tuesday, December 8th. This is African American Studies. I'm your instructor, Mr. Townsend. I'm going to pull up a presentation for us to get started with. File, open recents. Okay. So I have a poll. I don't know if we did this poll before or not, but I'm going to do it again to see.
I don't know if you saw my email, but I had asked you to send me the classroom code
For which one, Manaya?
for this class.
Okay. Give me 1 second. I'll send it to you right now. That's for Summit, right? To get in the Summit?
Yes.
Okay. Give me 1 second. I'll get it for you. Okay. All right, so Manaya, check your email. I just sent you the codes to get enrolled into Summit. Hi, Heaven. Welcome. Is there anyone else who needs codes for Summit to do the checkpoints? So this is a poll that I put up. And the question is, if you were enslaved, what measures would you take? So I have 3 people that voted. There's 4 options to either accept the slavery, to run away, to fight, or to flat out kill the master. So I've had 4 people vote. So I had 3 other people that need to vote. If you voted, if you could just put a thumbs up in your box, it'll let me know. Thank you, Ty Quill. So there should be a poll on your screen now that says, if enslaved, what measures would you take? So please pick one of the options for me. Okay, that's 5. If you don't see the poll, answer in the chat. So I still have 2 more people who have not voted. I want you to choose one of the 4 options. If you were enslaved, what measures would you take? The 4 options is to accept it, to run away, to fight, or to revolt and kill the master. I want to spend about like 20 more seconds, so if you didn't vote, please vote. Okay, so for time's sakes, I'm going to share the results with you. So 3 of you guys said that you would fight back. Well, 4 total said that they would fight back, and 2 said they would run away. So it doesn't seem like there would be much accepting of the state of slavery going on, which is a good thing. So we're going to talk about, We're going to talk about slavery and black militarism, or fighting back, those who chose to fight back. Let me start from the beginning. Okay. Where's our agenda at? Okay. So our agenda today is going to be slavery and the idea of a boiling point. We're going to review abolitionists. We're going to do a little bit with Jim Crow laws. Your checkpoint 1 is up for Jim Crow laws. And there's a PowerPoint and some references and some hyperlinks on Summit that you can use to answer number 1. So let's talk about slavery. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. We're just going to give you an overall idea of what slavery was in North America. So beginning in 1619, African peoples began to be either sold, stolen, and sometimes abducted or tricked into the cruel practice of human slavery. This hyperlink here, where's it at? This hyperlink here will give you a comprehensive timeline of Black history and slavery if you want to do any more extensive studies on it, if the subject interests you or you want some more information about it. So the atrocities that were committed against African peoples and those of African slaves and dissidents, were people who would go against the government during this time, were unmeasurably cruel and heartbreaking. Slaves had every aspect of their life controlled by someone else. They had no autonomy, which is freedom of thought. And some fought, some ran, some accepted. The ones I believe that accepted would probably be more out of fear of retribution, of being harmed physically, or being separated from their families, or putting in a worse position of servitude. So because of the treatment of the American Negro in North America, social change began to happen in the mid-1800s. For over 200 years, there was physical, psychological, and emotional abuse had kind of reached a boiling point. So I want to go, I just want to find this hyperlink real quick. Manai, did you get the codes for Summit, by the way?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Once you're enrolled in Summit, let me know so I can activate your checkpoints, okay?
Oh, I'm enrolled.
Okay. Then I have to, then I'm going to have to reassign you. Let's see if I can find this here. So I'm going to share a short video with you. This is the actual link. So you can use this link to get information about slavery. It's more of a comprehensive list, and it starts in 1619. Okay, everyone see the screen where it says slavery in America. This is 1870s. As a young girl being auctioned off as property. So in 1619, slavery started. When the privateer, the White Lion, brought 20 African slaves ashore in the British colony of Jamestown, Virginia. So this is from 1619, which is approximately 400 years ago. There's a short video in here. Let me see if it'll come up.
Sweeten up that routine. Pour Goya coconut milk. Add eggs.
Not trying to sell you Goya products. That's someone else doing that.
To 1866, 12.5 million Africans were taken from their homeland and forcibly shipped across the Atlantic. A journey that almost 2 million of them wouldn't survive. By the turn of the 18th century, European merchants were building vessels capable of transporting hundreds of slaves per journey. These ships had extra portholes for ventilation, weapons mounted on deck in case of rebellion, and additional compartments added below deck to take on more human cargo. Before boarding the ships at African port cities, slaves were stripped of their clothing and remaining possessions and had their heads completely shaved. During boarding, which could take weeks or even months, slaves lived on the deck of the ship in a temporary wooden house constructed by the crew. The crew also installed netting around the deck of the ship, designed to catch slaves who might opt for death over forced servitude. Once moved below deck, slaves would find themselves stuffed into compartments with ceilings as low as 4.5 feet, where they would spend most of their voyage. They were segregated by gender and age. Adult men were kept separately and shackled in pairs. Women usually left unbound in their designated compartment, and children often free to move about the ship. There was no plumbing of any kind. Slaves were forced to relieve themselves where they sat, creating hellish conditions when combined with the heat and lack of ventilation below deck. Disease was rampant. Measles, smallpox, influenza, scurvy, and dysentery, the #1 killer, ravaged slaves and crew members alike. The slaves generally spent about 8 hours a day above deck, but were still separated by gender with a barricado, a reinforced wall that could be used to protect crew members in case of a revolt. Slaves were also subject to forced exercise, sometimes including dance and song for the entertainment of the crew. Disobedient slaves were tortured and beaten, usually whipped with the especially cruel cat-o'-nine-tails, a tool designed to inflict maximum pain. Slaves who refused to eat their typical meal of rice and beans were forced to do so, sometimes with a speculum oris, a medieval tool used to pry open unwilling mouths. Women, while usually left unshackled, were raped and sexually abused by members of the crew, sometimes arriving in the New World carrying the children of their attackers. But it was the women, using their minuscule freedoms, who would often coordinate mutinies against their captors. But these rebellions were rarely successful. The true extent of the horrors of the Middle Passage came to light in a 1783 court trial over the slave ship Zong. The Zong left Africa in 1781 with 442 enslaved on board. After a 2-month journey riddled with navigation errors, 62 slaves and 7 crew members had perished without reaching their destination. Disease was spreading throughout the ship, and fresh water was running dangerously low. Captain Luke Collingwood was afraid of the financial costs of more deaths. Slaves that died of disease were not covered by the ship's insurance, but slaves who drowned were. Some 133 slaves were thrown overboard. Collingwood claimed it was necessary to do so to halt the spread of disease. At the trial between the Zong's owners and their insurance company, the owners argued that because it was legal to kill sick animals for the health of a ship, it was legal to treat infected slaves the same. The court agreed, but the trial itself exposed the horrors aboard the Zong. The story was republished by British abolitionists with the name of the ship redacted, meant to show that this tragedy could happen on any slave ship across the Middle Passage. 24 years after the Zong trial, the slave trade was outlawed in both Great Britain and the United States. It would take England another 26 years, and the U.S. another 58, plus a civil war, before the practice of slavery was banned outright.
Okay, so let me stop that real quick. I have a little bit of feedback on the video just that we watched. How, when you see these atrocities that were committed to the slaves, when they were taken and put in such inhumane conditions, what type of reaction does that make you feel? What does that tell you about the act and the policy of slavery?
They was treating them like less than humans.
Yes, absolutely. They were treated less than humans. They were also treated such as almost as like animals, like farm animals. Very cruel, inhumane conditions, stuffed in ships and brought over to America And then and only to be, when they got here, to be forced into lifelong servitude. Some people chose to die in the sea. Some people committed suicide. But just the general brutality of slavery itself took a toll on people long-term and short-term. So slavery as a whole was a terrible practice that was commonplace in America from 1619 almost to 1865. It was outlawed in 1807 and 1833 in England and other parts of the world, but in the United States, it took a civil war up until 1865 and the 13th Amendment for slaves to be freed from a state of bondage. So our next question are, who are abolitionists? And people who opposed slavery were called abolitionists. Some of the abolitionists that we're going to study over the next week are Frederick Douglass, John Brown, and Nat Turner. Today, we're going to focus on Nat Turner. So in our last class, and for checkpoint 1, if you did not complete checkpoint 1, this kind of slide kind of sums up checkpoint 1. There is a PowerPoint presentation on Jim Crow laws. But Jim Crow laws were designed to keep blacks from having civil liberties. And there was restriction when we looked at the last PowerPoint in education, travel, leisure, land ownership, social dealings, social mobility, housing, and even bathroom and toiletry differences. And we also had different entrances for people at restaurants, movies, all those different places. So Jim Crow laws were designed to keep black people in a limit capacity. And that capacity mostly was either labor or farmer, or even a lot of times forced labor, which is another way of saying slavery, forced labor. State legislators had special sessions just to enact these Jim Crow laws, and these Jim Crow laws targeted only Black Americans, which means they did not apply to white Americans. And that was also with our voting, the voting polls, and these literacy tests that they used to give people. By the way, which are all unconstitutional. So talking about before we delve into Nat Turner's revolution, if you had to, in a chat, based off of what you saw, describe American slavery, if you could, in 3 words or less. Okay. So in the chat, I want you to put 3 words that describe American slavery. I would say it was cruel, inhumane, and just flat out wrong. Manaya says disgusting. Does anyone else have any input? Shameful, absolutely. Anybody else have any input on if you had to describe American slavery in 3 words or less? I've got 2 from Manaya. I put up 1 myself. Denham, what do you think? Tyquil, Heaven, do you have a response to this? Based off what you saw in the video and the way that they were brought here.
I think that's traumatizing. I don't got no other words but that.
Okay, good. Traumatizing. Thank you. Harsh and insane. Thank you, Denham. So all these words, there's no, from disgusting to cruel, inhumane, wrong, shameful, harsh, insane, traumatizing, all of those are correct. I still think at the end of the day, it's almost a inhumane devalue of human life. To treat another human being with such cruelty and such disregard for family units, for people's personal autonomy, for people's personal space. That's why I asked you in the beginning, if you were in a state of servitude or slavery, would you fight back? So what type of sacrifices do you think that slaves had to make each day? Considering the fact that they had to work long hours on fields, they were denied the right to read, they were denied the right to vote. What type of sacrifices do you think that were made each day by slaves? What about having to constantly take orders from someone else? Which means from when you wake up in the morning until when you go to bed at night, someone is giving you orders on what you have to do. What type of effect do you think that would have on someone psychologically? That they could never do what they wanted to do, that they always had to do what someone else told them to do.
That's how the world is, though. Like, you can't do whatever you want. Well, you can, but not like for real.
Okay. I guess.
I would have killed myself. I would have ran away or something because I'm not listening to nobody or calling nobody master.
And there's a lot of people that thought that way. Okay. There was a lot of people that thought that way. So we know that slavery was never a justified way to treat another human being. Never. Okay. The 13th Amendment actually left the door open for people who were prisoners. And there's a scary stat here, and we'll come back to that scary stat. But piggybacking off of what was said about running away or being scared, in the time we have remaining, I want to teach you about Nat Turner real quick. So Nat Turner was a slave who returned to a state of servitude. He was a educated black man who used to do preaching and so forth for blacks and whites the same. So we're gonna have to do this lesson in two parts.
We are St. Joseph.
I just want to show you a picture of what Nat Turner looked like, so you have an idea who we're talking about. And then I'm going to show you a short dramatization of what happened in Nat Turner's rebellion. So if you look here, that's a good picture right there. That's what Nat Turner looked like, okay? And I'm going to tell you what the significance of what Nat Turner did. He led a slave revolt. That's another picture of Nat Turner. So Nat Turner believed that slavery itself was a institution that was, I'm going to show you the video first. We'll go back and review the ones next time because we got 14 minutes left. So those of you who said that you would fight or run away, I'm going to show you one of the responses. It's called black militarism, or this is the opposite of we will overcome. Everything's going, these songs that people used to sing. This is a direct response from people who are in bondage. And we don't know exactly what we would do if we were put in a state of bondage, but I'm going to show you what Nat Turner did. Let me find him. Okay. All right, so this is about 6 minutes long. And this is the response that Nat Turner gave to slavery, or responded to because of the conditions of slavery. So while we're watching this, I want you to think about, why did Nat Turner revolt, and was he justified in his revolt? Can everybody see the screen? Just give me a thumbs up if you can see it. It should be like an orange face here. You can see that, Denim, the screen? Okay, thank you, Tyquil. All right. Oh, nice to see you, Denim. Actually, have a camera on. All right, so this is the story of Nat Turner.
August 1831, Southampton County, Virginia. The fears of the slaveholding South were realized. Rebellion. Over 70 slaves armed with knives, hatchets, and bludgeoning objects swept the pastoral countryside, killing all in their path. Their leader was a slave named Nat Turner. Born in the year 1800, Nat's mother had been kidnapped and brought from Africa. His father, a slave who later escaped. He would preach to fellow slaves and even some whites, earning him the nickname Prophet, and even claimed to receive visions. When he was 22, he escaped and fled, only to return to the plantation voluntarily. When asked why, he claimed, "The Spirit appeared to me and said I had my wishes directed to things of this world and not to the kingdom of heaven, and that I should return to the service of my earthly master." But Nat was not back to subserviently serve in bondage. He knew his purpose was to avenge those that suffered under the chains of slavery. At age 27, while working in his master's field, an intense vision befell him. The serpent is loosened. Christ laid down the yoke for the sins of man, and you shall take it up to fight against the serpent. The time is near when the first shall be last, and the last shall be first. Nat began to prepare. At first confiding only in those closest to him. Then, in 1831, a solar eclipse appeared in the sky like a black fist blotting out the sun. They planned the uprising for July 4th, Independence Day. But illness befell Nat, and the insurrection was called off. That was until August of the same year, when another solar eclipse occurred and the air turned a ghastly grayish blue. This was the sign Nat was waiting for. The rebellion began a week later. It started the night of August 21st. The small band of slaves killed Nat's owner, Joseph Travis, his wife and son, as well as a hired worker, in their beds while they slept. After the group left, they recalled that there was one more member of the Travis family. So 2 slaves returned to kill the infant in its cradle. Nat felt that this violence was necessary to finally bring about the change needed to awaken abolitionist allies and shake the foundation of slavery to pieces. To Nat, this wasn't about anger. It was holy retribution. Over the next 2 days, the rebellion brought Old Testament carnage to the Southampton countryside, killing more than 60 whites in their path. Hundreds of federal troops and thousands of white militiamen intercepted the rebellion on its way to the center of the county's government, a town named Jerusalem. Nat managed to escape, hiding himself in the woods for over 2 months until he was found. Once captured, he was quickly tried, convicted, and hanged. His body was desecrated, flayed, and decapitated, with his headless remains buried in an unmarked grave. 30 other slaves and 1 free black man would also be convicted, 19 of them being hanged and the others sold to places far away. But this punishment paled in comparison to those African Americans that were murdered by paranoid, vengeful whites. Upwards of 200 blacks were killed by mobs during and following the rebellion. In the aftermath, some whites, including Thomas Jefferson Randolph, grandson to the 3rd president, called for gradual emancipation to remove slavery. Instead, what followed in Virginia were even harsher codes for blacks. No jury trials for African Americans. Free blacks found guilty of crimes could be sold into slavery. And it was now illegal to teach any black to read. Many other southern states followed suit. Nat Turner's rebellion was a product of over 2 centuries of oppression in Virginia. While the concentrated horror committed by those in the insurrection cannot be denied, the horrors inflicted upon them and their ancestors must be remembered to begin to understand the event. It was a violent, abominable response to a violent, abominable system, and it proved the age-old truth. Evil begets evil. Those slaves and even some whites.
Okay, so let's respond to the video about Nat Turner. So why did Nat Turner revolt against his slave masters? What was the reason why he led a revolt? And yes, Heaven, this is a true story. It's not fake. Why did Nat Turner revolt? What was he revolting against? What type of institution? We just talked about it for a few minutes before we watched the video. Denham, what do you think? Why do you think Nat Turner revolted? What did the video say happened? Okay, good. Thank you, Destiny. So you were paying attention. She says that she doesn't think it was evil that he revolted because he believed God gave him signs to do so. Good. So Nat Turner believed that God had given him signs. One of them was a solar eclipse, actually 2 solar eclipses that happened back to back. Was he justified in his action? Destiny already responded and said she doesn't think it was evil for him to revolt and to kill his slave masters because of the treatment that they had given black people and slaves for 200 years. So does anyone think that what he did was wrong? You have to also remember that they killed an infant. They killed a small child. So let's have some input on that. Was it wrong to revolt against such evil conditions? I had a couple people in the polling saying that they would fight back, that they would even kill the master. So agree or disagree. Was it wrong for him to revolt? Tyquil, you have an idea? Fayana, you there? In which type of way, Fayana? Okay, so you are along the lines that it should be something that is done not through the bloodshed of other people. Okay, thank you. Some people agree that Nat Turner should have revolted. I'm sure if I watched people in my family being beaten or hung or killed, that my mindset may change a little bit.
You should not resort to anger and blood. Mind you, that baby had nothing to do with anything. Although they would have
So does a
household
lot of black
teach their
babies,
people.
though. They kill black children. They take them, separate them from their family. They don't have nothing to do with what's going on in the black adults, but that don't stop them anyway. And either
People have a
way, he's
mindset of
stopping
that.
the cycle because either way, back in that time, as a child, you're going to grow up to be exactly what your parents are. They're going to inherit that whole slave trade. They're going to inherit that whole property, including those same people. So yeah, I'm gonna kill the child too. At the end of the day, I'm about to stop this one way or another. Because if I don't, the cycle's going to continue.
Yeah, she right though, cause I'm killing the babies too. Cause y'all didn't really care when y'all was killing my grandmama and them. So
How society is so wrong.
Well, see what Destiny and Heaven are saying. If they leave that baby himself is going to grow up to be another slave master.
No, only if you teach that baby that babies don't grow up to have hate or happiness. They grow up
Back
like
in that
like numbers.
time, they were
they
taught
gonna
to
teach the
hate black
baby.
people.
At that
They they probably be whipping them people in front of the babies and everything. So the baby gonna be like, oh yeah, let me do this when I get big.
If you change someone's mind, their perspective and everything, I promise you, you will technically, 9 times out of 1, you will technically get a better result. You don't
See,
have
that's
to just
now,
hurt
Faye.
someone
That's
or
not back
pain or anger
then.
just to result on that. That's not how it works. People are innocent. A lot of people are innocent. And a lot of people minds, they have different perspectives. You can't just kill anyone you're getting mad at, even though you might think or you might believe, but you don't know. A child is a child, an innocent child. God never wanted people to shed blood. That's not how it is. And people with anger, I know that slavery was so bad, but people with anger should not result into violence because that's what you give into the world. You're teaching them, you're feeding them violence. And that's why cops these days and everybody these days have different opinions and alternatives because of the fact of it is everybody results to violence. Someone get hurt on your family, you result to violence. You don't say forgive and forget. There's never forgive and forget. Everyone results to only their pain getting reflected back onto someone else because they're hurt. But not knowing everyone's hurt and they cannot hurt other people. Some people have been damaged, broken down more than other people, and they don't result to violence. They result into forgiving, happiness, trying to do something better for somebody else. I know a white lady, she had took in a black man because he had killed her son, and she asked for forgiveness. She asked that boy to come home to her, even though people have might have thought that he was going to kill her, she was going to kill him for payback or anything, but she had got that boy at college. That's the same vice versa for a black woman and a white child. It's the same
That
thing.
is for now, Faye. We're not talking about now. We're talking about back then. Back
Back
then,
then,
a
I still
child,
want to kill the child.
but it might be wrong to certain people, and that's a opinion. But back then, in a white household that's down the south, you are raised to
You
hate
still
black
have
people. You
people
are
loving
raised
black
to see
people.
yourself as superior. You are raised to understand what happens on a plantation is what you're going to be doing once you get a certain age. You're raised to use the N-word. You're raised to discriminate. You're raised to hate. That is what they were raised and bred to be. Just
Back
like they
then,
seen us bred to be slaves and cotton pickers and whatever the case may be. They thought we were bred for that purpose. That's what white children were bred for. So if he put a stop to that or seen it as such, then I don't think that's wrong whatsoever.
I know white people try to stop a lot of stuff back then. Back then, when all that happened, I know white people were disgusted. Some people were disgusted by that. People were hurt. People were
Those are the people in the
evicted.
north.
And they were ignored, just like black people were ignored. Anybody, I'm not saying just all whites, but there were some people trying to help blacks, and they got killed for that. They got slaughtered for that. Their family houses got burnt and everything for that. Their land got burned for that. Where blacks were on their own because they tried to lean on whites that tried to protect them. Blacks are not, and then you had own blacks killing their own kind. So it's not a race, is not a color picked it, because every last color got infected during that time.
Okay. Listen, every single point that you guys are made are valid, and that's why I'm letting you have this conversation. So I'm going to play devil's advocate because we have to wrap up here, and we'll continue. I think what Fayana is saying is that she values human life, and she doesn't believe that blood solves anything. She's talking about people who are abolitionists. We're actually going to talk about abolitionists next class, Fayana. We're going to talk about a man named John Brown who was white who did the same thing. What Destiny in Heaven is saying is that the baby that was born in the plantation in the 1800s would have grown up to oppress hundreds of other black people.
You don't know that, sir.
I would
Yeah,
have,
we
I would
we
have,
don't know that.
I would say I have to say historically.
A lot of babies have like that, but not a lot. Some of them were trying, and just like a baby can be taught something to kill somebody, they can still turn out not to.
Okay, I
It's your own mindset, predicate. It's your mindset. God doesn't choose.
Imagine this. Imagine if your mother and father were killed by slaves. The rest of your life, you will have a vendetta against slaves, which means you
No,
would be extra cruel to slaves. If they knew
that's some people.
that's some people, but we're talking about 1831.
That's some people. I was saying the same thing. Science, you can have science on that. You can have everything. You can believe that, but I don't believe that. God is different. And if I choose that God is different and different Muslims and stuff like that, then I believe that some of those people were not, and they did not want to hurt them people. You had you had white people putting black little mixed kids into the baby households where they had to train them to try to disobey or obey the white babies, and some of them did not like that, and I promise you that.
And you are correct on that one. So I'm glad we have a discussion going. Just to give you a heads up, we have an assembly in a few minutes. We're going to go back and we're going to finish Nat Turner next time. All right. So I thank you guys for all your input, and it's okay for us. That's why it says to agree and disagree. Okay. You're taking a position and you're defending your position. And that's what I wanted you to do. Okay. So there's no right or wrong on this. It is just simply your opinion. So I'm just going to do an exit, make sure that I have everybody here, gets credit for being here, and I will see you folks on Thursday. We have an assembly in 5 minutes, okay? So thank you for sharing, Heaven. Thank you, Denim, Fayana, Amira, everyone else that put in today, okay? We will continue on Thursday. All right, see you guys. Good class.